What is a dirty little secret about an industry that you have worked in, that people outside the industry really should know? Not all that much of a secret, but I used to work in a peanut butter factory. We produced about 25 to 30ish different store brands ranging from very cheap to stupidly expensive. We had a grand total of 3 recipes, chunky, not chunky and no additives. We touch your food with our hands. Weird. And yes, we wash them so often that they might fall off. That, or you get assholes that wear gloves for 12 hours and never change gloves or wash their hands. They put little weights in lipsticks to make them feel more expensive so they can charge more. Zoos and museums are universally held together with double-sided tape. The size or prestige of the organization doesn't matter either. If you're ever buying bulk gravel/sand/crushed stone from a local pit/quarry that has scales to weigh the amount of product you're getting fucked because you're paying for water. Most of these pits/quarries spray the living F out of their stockpiles before/during operation to make the material heavier in the truck. Never buy by the ton, always buy aggregate by the cubic yard. It's a measure of volume, not weight. Source: I own a rock crushing business/multiple quarries and I charge by the cubic yard to not screw the public, smiley face. When the health inspector shows up, a mad scramble happens in the back to clean the kitchen while they start the inspection in the dining/bar area of the restaurant. There is a lot of money spent every year that decides where specific items are placed on grocery store shelves. If you're at a grocery store that's part of a chain, and you look at a shelf and there's an item that's approximately at eye level, I guarantee you that the company that makes that item paid a lot of money to put them there. There's lots of weird psychological tricks that go on in terms of how stores are laid out. People like to think that data analytics is some objective truth when there is so much bias and room for subjectivity in data collection, analysis, interpretation, and communication. Oftentimes insights are cherry-picked datasets deliberately presented to make a specific point rather than having the data craft the conclusion. Ex-farmer here. Specifically, I worked at a bio-certified one. Since there were no pesticides or herbicides used, every snail, every bug, every mouse had to be killed manually or by having a lot of their natural predators around. Cats. The reason? Nobody buys tomatoes, or anything else with snail bites on them. If it's the first time a professor is teaching a course, there is a good chance they are just one lecture ahead of the rest of the class. The roses you buy at Valentine's Day were harvested around Christmas. It's the worst time of the year to buy roses, and I don't mean because they're more expensive. They're also the worst quality because it's a longer holding time between harvest and use than any other time of the year. Never ever send flowers through an order processing service. Look at the location you're in or sending to and talk to a florist in that area directly. Don't pick a picture off some external website. Ask the florist what they have and can make that fits your budget. If you're worried, ask them to text you a pic of the completed design. Locksmith here. We can get into any lock/door within 30 seconds. All the posturing and bringing out an impressive toolkit and hammer drill is just showmanship to prolong the call out. 30 seconds flat. Microsoft Excel runs the country. When you go somewhere that has novelty beer dispensers that you and a group can take to your table, just know they are incredibly difficult to clean thoroughly and there's probably mold in there. A very popular local bagel shop/bakery I worked at advertised all of our baked goods were homemade, dozens of muffins, Danish, cinnamon rolls etc., and they were not. They all came from Cisco, frozen on sheets. Many customers would rave about the baked goods saying they were the best they've had. God bless them. Nobody who actually sorts mail gives a shit about your package. The word fragile doesn't stop them from throwing it 20 feet into a metal container. When an app pops up with a "Do you like this app?" thing, the yes button goes to the App Store for a review, the no button goes to an internal complaint process. This on average filters upset customers away from the App Store and artificially raises App Score by a whole star on average. That is the only way most corporate service apps have 4 stars. Bedbugs are actually incredibly common in hotels. It's just that nicer hotels generally have better means of treating them. Whenever you see a high-profile person publishing an opinion piece in a news outlet, 9 times out of 10, they didn't write that. The author came up with a 1 to 2 sentence concept of what they wanted to say, their second-in-command engaged whoever the ghostwriter is, the ghost created the copy, the high-profile person's second reviewed for necessary changes, the high-profile person themselves reviewed and signed off, and the second engaged marketing people to place the piece in a news outlet. If you see an article from a CEO, a senior VP, a member of an elected body, anyone with status, they don't write their own stuff. This is not inherently bad. Organization leaders are busy, and they have the resources to have a team oversee their public-facing thoughts, so they don't have to worry about it. Still, the opinion pages of just about every news outlet in America, and elsewhere, are populated largely by ghostwriters. Source: I am a ghost. Airlines often make more money carrying cargo than passengers. Also, they have much stricter contracts about delivering cargo on time than passengers. If a plane is overweight, they will usually remove passengers before they remove cargo. I used to work as a secretary at a roofing company. A common practice of scumbag roofing companies, in regards to rubber row home roofs, if your neighbor calls a scumbag roofing company and they fix their roof and then not long after you or another neighbor's house starts leaking, there's a terrible possibility that the scumbag company went out and knifed a hole in your roof. They do this because your neighbor may recommend their company to you as their roof is no longer leaking. Scummy move. 75%, based on personal experience, of the people working on volume-build housing sites in the United Kingdom, think Persimmon, Bloor etc., give 0 fucks about the quality of their work as long as they get paid, and don't have to go back and put it right. The ice cream machine is not broken, no one put it in its cleaning cycle when it needed to be, so they're locked out of it until they do the whole cleaning process. Wells Fargo, and other banks. Wells Fargo is just the worst I've had experience with, likes to come up with ways to illegally charge you fees. They then eventually get sued, pay a fine that is less than 1% of the profit they made on those fees, then finds a new slightly different way to fuck you some more. Rinse and repeat. Find a good credit union. Mega banks are all screwing you over. Hotels don't change the comforter on the beds in between guests unless there's a noticeable stain on it. If the pillows are placed on a chair instead of on the bed at checkout, housekeeping assumes they weren't used and puts them back on the bed without changing the pillowcases. All of this is due to cutting corners in housekeeping because the keepers are under strict timers for each room, and they have an insane amount of rooms to do every day. This isn't necessarily a dirty little secret, but I work in a clinical laboratory at a big hospital. There is absolutely no difference between pregnancy tests you get from the dollar store versus the $20 Clear Blue at CVS. They have the same exact technology. Also, we use cheap-ass pregnancy tests in the lab. Please save yourself, if you're in the US, that $1,000 ER visit and get a cheap-ass pregnancy test. I promise they are no different. Cruise ship crew members are underpaid and overworked, to the point where it'd be illegal in most rich countries. Explanation: I worked for a company that serviced cruise ships while they were on shore and in port. The staff and crew on the ships, who actually travel with the ship, are often from developing countries and are really underpaid for the amount of hours they put in. Here in Canada, and I'm sure in the US too, it'd likely be below minimum wage. How can the companies get away with this? Flags of convenience. Much like how cars have different license plates from different provinces/states, ships must also be registered to a jurisdiction. But because there aren't enforced rules about the ship actually being from where they're registered, they tend to have home ports from countries where labor laws and regulations are more relaxed. and follow the rules from those places instead of their actual places of operation. The crew puts up with this because despite being underpaid by wealthy country standards, that translates to a lot of money in their home countries. So if they work for a few years on a cruise ship, they can gather enough money to put their kids through school or buy a new house back in their own country. So they tolerate it. This is why you have so many ships that have Panama City or Nassau painted on the rear as their home port, even if the company itself is based in Florida or something and the ship itself has never been to its own port of registry.